So I recently made a video about what I consider the greatest speech in the English language. Maybe not if we're talking about plays by Shakespeare and soliloquies. I dare say there are many better. But in terms of British monarch or leader at a time of crisis, it was a speech at Tilbury that she gave to the troops. And I love that bit about, I think foul scorn that any prince of Spain or Parma should invade my realm. All this stuff. Wonderful speech. But here we take an interesting juxtaposition. We're going to the most ungrateful speech in human history. And of course, it's by who else? Charles de Gaulle, leader of the Free French. So we've got to remember, this is happening in August, 25th of August, in fact, 1944. And this is after Paris has been liberated. Very, very unwisely, in my opinion, the Allies had allowed de Gaulle, with his tiny little army, to walk into Paris as though they had liberated all of France, expecting, of course, that in his speech he'd acknowledge the sacrifice, the fact that on Omaha Beach, the Americans on the 6th of June had taken 2,300 casualties. We'd all taken casualties, bearing in mind as well that not far off, 60,000 Brits had landed on the 1st of June. 6th of June, 60,000 or so Americans, 20-odd thousand Canadians, and 177 French in that initial invasion. And admittedly, some more Free French kind of had come in afterwards and helped out a little bit. But, all the weaponry, everything they had, of course, was Allied made. And let's not forget that we were, as I mentioned before, we were taking World War I level casualties. If we count from the 6th of June to the smashing of the Germans at the Falaise Pocket, it was a campaign of 11 weeks, 4 days in Normandy. We suffered 100 deaths per week per division. And we had between 19 and 20 divisions, depending on how you count them. Whereas on the Somme, we only suffered, I say only, it was awful, but I think it was 69 deaths for the 51 Division gauge, 69 deaths per week, per division, for albeit a longer number of weeks. I think it was about 22 weeks and a day, if I remember correctly. But anyway, on with the speech. This is when de Gaulle, 25th of August, speaks to the liberated French. He says, I'm not going to affect a silly French accent, much as I'd like to mock this git, but I shan't. Why should we hide the emotion which seizes us all, men and women who are here at home in Paris, that stood up to liberate itself, and that succeeded in doing this with its own hands? Interesting. No, we will not hide this deep and sacred emotion. There are minutes which go beyond each of our poor lives. Paris! Paris outraged! Paris broken! Paris martyred! But Paris liberated. Liberated by itself. Liberated by its people. With the help of the French armies. It's interesting that's in the plural. Okay, they had armies, did they? Fair enough. Sorry, I mustn't interrupt. With the support and the help, is he going to mention the Allies? No. With the support and the help of all France! Of the France that fights! The France that capitulated and surrendered very ingallantly and then broke its treaty obligations, hence we had to sink their fleet. Yes, that France. Okay, but anyway, sorry, I mustn't interrupt. Of the France that fights, of the only France, of the real France, of the eternal France. Yes, the Vichy puppet France. Okay, well, since the enemy which held Paris has capitulated into our hands... Yeah, okay, no. Got smashed up by British and American aircraft and was surrounded by British and American armies. Montgomery and Patton. But okay, no, apparently, capitulated into our hands. France returned to Paris. She has returned bleeding, but resolute. She has returned enlightened by this immense lesson, but more certain than ever of her responsibilities and her rights. Yeah, shame she forgot her responsibilities in 1940, when they had a responsibility not to make a separate peace, but did, and had a responsibility for their fleet to be turned over to someone neutral or to the British. Well, in fact, the responsibility of the treaty was not to make a separate peace, therefore the fleet should have fought on with the British. Hence, we had to take action. Okay, we do get a mention. Okay, let me carry on. I say responsibilities first because for the moment we are still at war. What do you mean for the moment? You haven't been at war. You've been at peace with the Germans. After you collaborated, you helped murder most of the Jews of France. But okay, forever. Yeah, apparently they're still at war. They've been at war the whole time. Maybe what he means is they're different resistance groups murdering one another with British weapons. It could mean that, maybe the internal war of their resistance, which the Allies cut off weapons shipments to them in the end because they kept holding up tobacconists and they kept murdering each other, the different Trotskyites and the Stalinites and the Leninites and, the Gaullites and all these lot. There was just basic chaos. So they're like, no, we're not giving you any more Sten guns and stuff. We'll give you things that definitely can only really work to blow up a tank as opposed to shoot a tobacconist who won't give you his tobacco. I'm sorry, I shouldn't keep interrupting. Okay, so apparently they've been at war and there we are still at war. The enemy totters, but he is not yet beaten. He remains on our soil. It would not even be enough after what has happened if with the help of our, and this is nice, we do, I think, get a mention here, if with the help of our dear and admirable allies, we chased him out of our country. We want to go to his country, as we should, as conquerors. Yeah, you didn't chase him out of your country. We did. And amazingly, though, Churchill did give France, section of Berlin, section of Germany, all this stuff. So he did treat them like, like conquerors. He gave them a seat at the table, even though there was really no right, given their disgraceful breach of the treaty that we had with them, and the way in which they fought us tooth and nail, Madagascar, Syria, Operation Torch, French North Africa. Yes, there were some who realised that they had obligations and they told their soldiers to put down their arms and formed an alliance and everything else. But there were many who, because of some ridiculous ancient, Anglophobia, I guess, wanted not to be liberated. They'd rather be a puppet of the Germans. But okay, I mustn't keep waffling on. But anyway, we go back to the French now. This is why the French advance guard... Well, the French advance guard, I mustn't keep interrupting, but it's not an advance guard. The reason why it looks like an advance guard is because the Free French Army is so tiny. And the Allies said, yeah, all right, yeah, you can walk in front if you want. But it's the advance guard of the American Army and the British Army. But okay, he's implying here that... it gets worse, actually. So, this is why the French advance guard has entered Paris with guns blazing. I think that's unlikely. The Germans... basically made Paris like an open city as they did with Rome because they didn't want it to get destroyed. With guns blazing. This is why the great French army from Italy has landed in the south... Flipping heck, no. No. The landing in southern France. No, that was not a French army. That was many contingents of the British and American armies who've been fighting all the way up through Italy. And by and large, we stalemated it there and shipped a load of troops around to land in the south of France. But okay, apparently that was the French. This is why the great French army from Italy has landed in the south and is advancing rapidly up the Rhone Valley. This is why our brave and dear forces of the interior are going to arm themselves with modern weapons. It is for this revenge, this vengeance and justice that we will keep fighting until the last day, until the day of total and complete victory. This duty of war, all the men who are here, and all those who hear us in France, know that it demands national unity. And this is perhaps why he's harking on about the French and everything. It's really because they're afraid of civil war. They know they have a lot of resistance groups with a hell of a lot of weapons, and many of them communist. Many of them see de Gaulle as a traitor and an outsider and everything else, and they don't like him. He's worried the country is going to go up in flames in civil war. And frankly, had we carried on supplying the resistance groups with weapons, maybe it would have done. So I think this is the point of the speech. So I shouldn't be, quite... And I guess it is the most ungrateful speech in history, but I can see why, in a way, he's doing it. Apart from the fact he's a git, I can see it may have a purpose too. He talks about national unity. It demands national unity. We, who have lived the greatest hours of our history. Interesting one. So we had the finest hour in 1940 when we fought the Germans alone with a few supplies we paid for from America. Their greatest hour in their history was their illegally capitulating and signing a unilateral peace and not even giving over the fleet, which they had to do, and then fighting us when we were liberating them in their colonies to fight. I'm flipping it. This is a bad speech, this, but yeah. So apparently that's the greatest hours of French Well, it says a lot for French history, really, doesn't it? Quite frankly. Oh dear, I hope no one French listens to this. We, who have lived the greatest hours of our history, we have nothing else to wish than to show ourselves up to the end, worthy of France. That wouldn't be difficult, quite frankly, if you don't surrender and capitulate. If you actually say, no, we have allies, just like we stayed with them in the First World War. We didn't have to sacrifice 700,000 people to save France. You could argue. Yeah, thanks, France. You did that in the Second War. No, actually, you didn't. No, you surrendered illegally. Anyway, it ends with Vive la France! Long live France. Okay, the most ungrateful speech in history. Dear me, I'm probably going to get murdered by like a French assassin after that one. But anyway, anyone's listened to that, thanks.